On this channel, I build a lot of small form factor PCs. It's a bit of a passion of mine. I built a few that are sub 5 liters over the course of the year and mentioned the portability aspect as a benefit, to which I've had plenty of comments saying just to buy a gaming laptop. Now, Lenovo might agree with those commenters and offered to sponsor this video and send out one of their best gaming laptops, the Lenovo Legion 7i. You see, I've mentioned the portability of a super small PC, but I wasn't really implying on lugging it to a coffee shop to set up with a portable monitor and a keyboard and a mouse. That would be kind of stupid. It would obviously be a lot more fitting to bring a laptop in those situations. Now, while I primarily have been covering small form factor PCs over a year now, I actually started this channel covering gaming laptops. So I actually use both myself, and I think that they serve very different use cases in my life. The whole laptop versus desktop debate is fairly well understood at this point, but I think the comparison becomes more complicated when you talk about small form factor PCs versus a laptop, because there becomes more overlap in use cases. So starting with the portability, like I already mentioned, I don't think anyone realistically wants to take a desktop, even some of the smallest, as a daily driver. Compared to a regular sized desktop, sure, it'll fit in your bag, but who's gonna wanna carry that around on a daily basis? A laptop is always going to be the better option for that use case. Everything else is already built into this single package, right? You have the keyboard, trackpad, screen, and the biggest obvious benefit is that it runs off a battery. This one having a 99.99 watt hour battery, which is the largest you can fit into a laptop and still take it on an airplane. And if gaming while you're out is the main use, I mean, you could always get something like a Legion Go and be set. Now, if you're a student that games a lot or someone who is always on the go, a laptop will always be the best choice. Instead, that small size gains you the ability to bring it with you during occasional events if you want to, like once a week to a friend's house or something like that. Or even more realistically, it's perfect just to fit into smaller spaces. Maybe you don't need any portability at all, but you just don't have a lot of desk space. Or you do the van life thing, or maybe you drive a truck and you have a small space in the cabin for a PC. A small form factor PC could be a good fit if you want something stationary in those situations. And if you want a permanent home entertainment center PC, similar to a console, then a small PC could work there as well, especially if the machine and the games are shared by the whole family. That way it's just always set up for anyone who wants to use it. With that said, it's not like you can't hook your laptop up to a TV as well. This and many gaming laptops from Lenovo have an HDMI 2.1 port with a direct connection to the dedicated graphics card, or you can use the Thunderbolt 4 port, which has DisplayPort 1.4, meaning that you won't lose any performance from the machine when you connect it to an external display. This works really well to have as a personal gaming machine that can be used for all your portability needs and also home entertainment stuff. Okay, cool. So now that we have the obvious stuff out of the way, what about upgradability? Well, here's where things start to differ from your typical desktop versus laptop conversation. You see, while it's been known for a long time that performance and upgradability on a desktop is better, when you build small, things can get complicated depending on how small you go. So starting off, many of us define small form factor as a PC that's built in a case under 20 liters. Generally speaking, the larger side of that spectrum can fit larger components and therefore have more compatibility with different parts. Once you start getting around the 12 or so liters and under, things start to become more limited when it comes to component selection, and it can get a little bit confusing. When you build a PC, everything is upgradable because nothing is soldered on, but there are some size restrictions that you'll need to think about if you have a small form factor PC. So when a new GPU comes out that you're hoping to upgrade to, you'll have to hope that your case can support it as well. Or else if you want to upgrade otherwise, you'll be transferring all your parts to a new case just to make that upgrade. Many small form factor builds will also use a low profile CPU cooler, which is limited to the heat load that it can handle. So if a new CPU comes out, you'll need to make sure that your current cooler or another compatible cooler can handle it, which makes upgradability a little bit more complicated as well. Gaming laptops are also limited. The vast majority of gaming laptops are locked to the configuration that you buy. But that doesn't mean that nothing is upgradable. Like in the Legion 7i, you can actually upgrade your RAM and SSD if you need more memory or storage. And if you're wanting a GPU upgrade, you do have the option to buy an external GPU enclosure along with almost any GPU and connect it with a Thunderbolt 4 port on the laptop. This could also serve as a docking station where with one plug, you can get display, power, along with the graphic boost, depending on the eGPU. Now, this does come with a performance penalty on the graphics card, but could still be a significant jump in performance. When you build a PC, it also comes with a learning curve. You have to learn about the different parts that are available, research which are the best value and are compatible with each other. Then you have to learn how to assemble everything. Now, when you build small form factor, the compatibility becomes more limited. Now you need to start paying attention to CPU cooler height, the GPU length, and sometimes the size of all the parts down to the millimeter. And if your case has an adjustable center, you need to understand that the largest cooler and the largest GPU sizes listed on the manufacturer's page won't necessarily fit together, along with any other quirks that might come with your case choice. So that's something I try to help with on this channel to make small PCs more accessible, but it still can be very time consuming and intimidating for a lot of people. Even so, it can be a rewarding experience if you have the time to do it. You don't really need to consider any of that when you're purchasing a gaming laptop. Instead, manufacturers like Lenovo streamline the part selection process as much as possible and gives more customizable configuration options when you order directly from them on Lenovo.com. They're actually the biggest manufacturer, and with that comes a wide variety of options for whatever your use case is. I typically go for gaming laptops myself, so I configured mine with an Intel Core i9-14900HX processor and an NVIDIA RTX 4070 GPU. Something important to consider when you're buying one of these is to check the wattage available to the GPU. In this case, we have 130 watts available, which is going to allow us to get the full performance out of the 4070, considering it's capped at around 115 watts. You can also configure pre-built desktops from them as well if you do decide that you don't need the portability, but you still don't want to build it yourself. Also, if something goes wrong when you're building a PC, you'll need to know how to troubleshoot to figure out which components are faulty. You're going to have separate warranties for each of the components, and then it's up to you to contact the right manufacturer to get things resolved. The nice thing is that you can fix it yourself, but you're not going to get overall customer support or full cover warranty across the entire machine, which is more convenient. So let's take a look at the performance differences. This is all going to largely depend on the configuration that you have, of course. You can fit up to a 4090 in a PC that's 10 liters in size, and no laptop is ever going to be able to compete with that in terms of performance. But when I think about the size of PC that I see most commenters say, just buy a gaming laptop, it's usually on the smaller side, like around even the 5-liter mark. The best GPU that can fit in that size chassis is the low-profile 4060 or the single-fan 4060. Unless you want to spend $2,000 on an Ada 4000, but I think that's probably unrealistic in this comparison. Okay, so how does a mobile 4070 stack up against a desktop 4060? Now, even though a laptop can run off battery, if you want to gain the most performance, you will need to connect it to power. The 4060 is considered a 1080p card, but it's plenty capable of 1440p gaming. And considering that the laptop screen I have here is pretty close to 1440p, I think it makes more for an apt comparison at that resolution. So one of the first major features that have made gaming at a high refresh rate on these laptops more feasible is DLSS 3 frame generation. So if you get a 40 series like I have here, you can enable this in the supported games to sometimes double the frame rate with no perceivable loss of quality. It takes games like Ghost of Tsushima from 85 frames per second to 110. That base frame rate is already really good, but the overall smoothness does get improved by it. In a game like this, I don't really see why anybody wouldn't want to take advantage of these features. On the desktop 4060, at the same settings at 1440p, it's running around 90 frames per second, also with DLSS and frame generation, and 75 with frame generation off. So the laptop 4070 is actually outperforming the desktop 4060 here. It also costs more, but it's cool to see that you can get more performance in a portable system. So frame generation can be more effective in some games than others. The only downside is that it's not something that I would want to use in a competitive shooter because of the slight increase in latency. It's not noticeable in a single player game, but in a competitive game, that might leave you with a small disadvantage over the competition. So games like the finals have frame generation, but again, I don't like that extra latency here, so I would actually turn that off, and we're still getting a very playable over 120 frames per second. So engineers are looking to get as much power as possible in a small laptop chassis without overheating the system. But that still means that the device can get pretty hot to the touch, especially after a long session. Usually it's above the keyboard deck. And while gaming laptops have come a long way, there's going to be some level of fan noise. The Legion 7i is one of the better that I've heard. There's no high-pitched noises that come from the fans like some other devices I've tested in the past, which for me is the most important part when it comes to tolerable sound. This is another area where things differ from your typical laptop versus desktop conversation. Because while larger PCs are gonna have more fans, and in a lot of cases, larger fans, the overall noise level is definitely gonna be lower and will win if you compare that to a laptop, and in many cases, a small form factor PC as well. But if you tune a small form factor PC correctly, and you make sure to choose coolers that can adequately cool your component choices, you can have a pretty reasonably quiet system. I actually have a video that I'm working on that will explore that topic more in depth, so look out for that. Both can obviously be hooked up to any normal external display, but with a laptop, it's not strictly necessary. Laptop displays have gotten so good over the years, and with way more panel types, higher resolutions, and higher frame rates. The Legion 7i example has a few options. You can get a 16-inch 2560 by 1600 240Hz display, or a higher resolution 3.2K 165Hz one. Both are IPS, so you're going to get good viewing angles and colors. My primary use case is gaming, so I wanted that higher 240Hz refresh rate display. I just think that the screen's combination of size, resolution, bezel, and the overall quality looks very impressive. 240Hz is just incredibly smooth, especially if you're playing anything fast-paced. It's much easier to track targets at high refresh rates, and once you start looking outside of that, browsing YouTube, video editing, and other tasks have plenty of real estate at that resolution. With a small form factor PC, you are required to buy a separate display, and if you want to take it with you, then you'll need to buy a portable monitor. Now, I've been working on a solution to this with my own little custom case here, but even in that, you're going to be far limited in the display options available. And as far as I know, there isn't a portable monitor at the resolution and frame rates that are offered in these laptops. Pricing is a tricky subject here because small form factor PCs can be a little bit more expensive compared to a traditional mid-tower. But laptops are definitely still priced higher than that because they're an all-in-one package. You're getting a display, keyboard, trackpad, all of that built in, all of which you would need to buy separately on a PC. And ultimately, it's really going to come down to the configuration that you choose. For some people, portability is going to be more important than upgradability and are okay spending more money up front to have a PC that they can take with them and that's going to last them at least 4 or 5 years. But if you don't have that need and you just want something that won't take up too much space and has more upgradability potential, then a small form factor PC is where I'd go. So we've covered a lot of ground when it comes to this debate. I want to know what you think. I think it largely depends on your personal lifestyle and needs. I know that I'm lucky to have both in my life and that many people will need to choose only one. And if that's you, I hope that this might have helped with your decision somewhat. And if you're one of those commenters who says just buy a gaming laptop, then yeah, sounds like you know exactly what would work best for you.